Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It is a pretty miserable evening in Johannesburg. It's quite cold. Now, this morning started off really cold, very overcast, but warmed up throughout the day, and now it's getting really cold again. So clearly the winter is approaching South Africa. So I hope things are a little bit warmer back home. I really do appreciate everyone joining and taking the time this evening. Good to see so many familiar names up on here. Really cool to have you back on board. There's a few new names I've never seen before, so welcome to a webinar on one of my favorite destinations of all time, the Masai Mara. Good evening, Karina. Thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure everyone can hear me. There should be audio coming through. If you wouldn't mind in the chat, just give me a thumbs up or something just to make sure that my audio is pulling through. Yes, thank you, Grace. Thank you, Jennifer. So happy that you can all hear me. My lip reading skills are not great at all, so it's good. It's good that you can hear me. Thank you, Rupert, for that thumbs up. I know a few of the names I can see up on here have been to the Masai Mara in past years. When it comes to the new names that I see up on here, I'm not too sure if you have all been to the Mara. It's a truly phenomenal place. Good morning, Kim. I hope California is a little bit warmer than it is over here at the moment. But please feel free throughout this webinar to leave me questions in the Q&A tab, and I will get to answering those questions once we are done with a little bit of a slideshow and video that's going to take place. It's difficult for me to access this when I am busy, or when I'm busy sharing a screen. So I'll get to your answers at the end of it all if you do not mind. We still have about a minute or so and give people some time to get ready and join. I see there are still some names popping up. If you've just signed in, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me this evening. I hope you are having a great day so far. If it's at the end of your day, I hope you've had a great day. But yeah, so cool to see so many familiar names. It really is great. And obviously this evening we're chatting about the Masai Mara. I really do hope that in the near future, and I know a lot of you on here have booked trips with Wildeye already and secured your space for Mara weeks in the future. So I really do hope that this global madness ends sooner rather than later, and we can get out to the field and chat about the Masai Mara while we're in the Masai Mara. That would be epic. Jennifer, you were supposed to be on a safari with us in South Africa last week. Such a pity, but it's going to be so much sweeter now than when you join us next year. Trust me, it's well worth waiting for. And Jennifer, if it's your first safari experience, it's very well worth the wait. It's unfortunate that you have to wait, but is what it is, unfortunately. Okay, there are still names ticking in, but I think the clock has hit 6 or just a little bit over. So I'm going to go into sharing a screen and chatting about a really cool destination. And remember, as I'd mentioned, for those of you who just signed in, welcome once again, and please feel free to leave questions you have regarding the Mara or traveling to the Mara in the Q&A tab, and I will get back to those answers once I'm done sharing a screen. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to start. What is going on here? This prezzo soon. And close all of these tabs. Oh, my hard drive is making funny noises here when I started opening this up. So if there's a big bang and explosion, please call. But it seems like it's calmed down now. But we're chatting Masai Mara this evening. And for anyone who has been to the Masai Mara, it's quite easy to pinpoint out on a map. For those of you who have never heard of the Masai Mara before, this is an incredible game reserve based in Kenya. So one of the most well-known East African destinations, which is located in the southwestern corner of Kenya, where Kenya borders Tanzania. So where this big arrow is, this big red arrow in Masai Mara National Reserve, this is where this reserve is located. Beneath this black line is Tanzania, and this whole massive green area is the Serengeti. And obviously the Great Migration, which is probably one of the most well-known icons of East Africa and this particular area in general, takes place in this general area over here. So this area, the Masai Mara, was proclaimed or established as a wildlife sanctuary many years ago in 1961. And over the years, it's become one of the most popular game reserves in the world. And the name Masai Mara is in honor of the folk who used to live on this land. And this land was their life. And their cattle used to graze the grass in this area, drink the water in this area. And so it was only fair to name this reserve after them. So the first word in the reserve's name, Masai, is in honor of incredible people or the culture to which Dixon, this is our camp manager in East Africa, belongs. The second word of it, Mara, is the Ma. So the Masai, their native language is Ma, M-A-A. And the word Mara, basically directly translated from Ma into English, is spotted. And the reason why they chose this word is because if you look at the Masai Mara from afar, from an aerial image like this, and this is the Mara River running through the reserve, but it got the name because when you look at it from afar, you will see, because of the almost daily cloud cover in the area and a lot of shadows cast, as you can see on the escarpment on the top right over there, and all these little round shrubby type trees and bushes that grow scattered all around this place with big pieces of plains in between it. To the Masai, it looked like a spotted piece of land. So Masai spotted, if you want to translate it into English, Masai Mara. Beautiful name. And I'm chatting today about a safari outside of the peak season. And amongst the Wild Eye guides, I've probably been one of the most fortunate over the last couple of years, whereas I have hosted many safaris to the Masai Mara outside of the peak season, so outside of the Great Migration season. So the Great Migration season happens from late July to about mid-October. Everything outside of that period is considered off-peak season. So when the migratory herds aren't in and around the areas. In the month of February and July, I host a particular safari called the Best of Kenya. And this takes us to 4 incredible reserves throughout Kenya, one being the Masai Mara. And we would spend 3 nights in the month of February at Serena Safari Lodge. And it is beautiful. Walking through that lobby, you eventually get to the pool. The rooms are situated down the edges, and you just have this view of the plains of the Mara. And here's another example of that Mara, that spottedness. And I think, to me, one of the best views in Africa I have ever seen. It's just endless. Your eye sees to infinity. It's eventually the horizon drops. I think it goes on even more, but your eyes just can't see that far. It is a phenomenal destination. The other off-peak times we spend in the Masai Mara is in the month of June and after the month of October, outside of the Great Migration, where we will make use of our Wild Eye Mara camp. So this is a camp situated right on the bank of the Mara River, and by far one of the best locations to spend your nights inside the Masai Mara. And it is pretty much a glamping site. if you are not fond of camping, this has taken camping to the very next level. You have everything you need in your rooms, super comfortable, ensuite bathroom. Your shower is just about 2 meters off and away from your tent. And I mean, lying in this little piece of canvas at night, you hear every single sound that is going on. May it be your neighbors snoring, which is often the case because, well, for me at least, because facilitators sleep far out on the other edge. And yes, there's like some kind of snoring competition amongst the wild eye guides at night. They are loud, and me included probably. But this little piece of canvas separating you from hippos feeding around your tent every night, lion walking past your tent, hyena, you hear them all night long. So in my personal opinion, look, Mara Serena is a beautiful lodge that we visit in the month of February, but spending a night under canvas in the middle of Africa, I don't know, in my opinion, nothing really beats it. It is absolutely phenomenal. But now, moving on to a bit of a video clip. Everything you see here, bar the first piece, is footage that I've managed to capture during the off-peak. So during the months of February, during the months of June, and then late October into late November. So this is everything you can kind of expect in the off-peak months. At times you can get lucky and you can also see the migratory herds, but this is obviously all driven by nature's forces. We can't really pinpoint when these animals will arrive and when these animals will leave. But as you can see in this is a video clip, but it's obviously at the start, so you're seeing it. The Masai Mara is a land of some of the most incredible vistas. A sunrise like this is almost a given every single morning, if there is no cloud cover. But if you hear the word Masai Mara, when you hear it, read it, whatever it may be, this is what you think of. It is home to many attractions, and one that really stands out is obviously the Great Migration. And we're not here to chat about these mass herds and these massive herds of over 1 million wildebeest in one particular area, hundreds and thousands of zebra, other antelope, all with that initial goal to approach the Mara River, swim across it to get to greener pastures on the other side. And don't get me wrong, if you can get to the Masai Mara during this time, it is an incredible experience watching these animals cross the Mara River, the sounds, and you can feel the vibrations with these animals' hooves just knocking the ground, the dust, the smells, everything is just, all your senses are wide awake. So this is probably why the area is so well known, and because of this, it is one of the most incredible game reserves in the world. Downside to peak season, as you would see here, loads of vehicles. I'm sure you would have seen images and pictures of crossing points where there's over 100 vehicles situated at a crossing point. Maneuverability, it's difficult, it's tough. But looking at a scene like this, the grass is a lot greener. This is after the peak season. The grass is short. With the rains, it's nice and green, so it's bringing color back to the scene. But maneuverability is a lot easier. You can reposition the vehicle easily. If you want to get back in front of this lion, you can start up your vehicle and just zoom around. There's no vehicles kind of restricting your movements. And that's one of the biggest highlights when it comes to a safari in the Masai Mara outside of the peak season. It is tranquil. Minimal vehicles, minimal people, lodges are quieter, and it is a great experience all round. And as I'd mentioned, this is a map of the entire Masai Mara. And as I'd mentioned, vehicles can get quite crowded in the peak season. But how this works is you will see this is the Mara River running through the reserve, and this is obviously where the wildebeest and the zebra and all that cross the river during the peak season. So this is one area or one defining feature that divides the Mara Triangle, which is on this side, from the Mara main reserve. So it's the Mara River, the Olololo escarpment, and then the Tanzanian border that runs along down here. And this obviously forms a triangle. So every time Wildeye hosts a safari in the Masai Mara, it happens in the triangle. Reason being is that it is regulated extremely well. It's the rules that are in place are good rules. They are rules that everyone abides by, and the rangers within this area take zero nonsense. They will, if you step out of line, they're going to nail you for it. Whereas in the main reserve, and taking nothing away from it, it's still a beautiful area. Guys are a little bit chaotic on this side. So a lot of the times, if you would have seen 60 to 100 vehicles at a crossing point, not only blocking views for the other vehicles in the area and the other guests, but blocking the way for the wildebeest to actually cross the river, 95% of the time it happens on this side of the river when animals are trying to cross, which is extremely sad to see, but unfortunately it is what it is. And without those number of tourists that visit the park year after year, the park wouldn't be what it is. The money that the tourists bring in and the park fees that they pay goes to a good cause, mainly for the upkeep and the sustainability of the reserve itself. So Sereno Mara Camp is around this area over here where we stay in February, and our Mara Wildeye Camp is literally in this cul-de-sac, which is almost cut off right down at the bottom here. So we're in a very tranquil, quiet place. It is absolutely phenomenal. And then while we hosting safaris, peak or off-peak safaris in the Masai Mara, we always make sure that our main men, Sammy over here with the big white teeth, as he's super proud of them, and the next guy you'll see coming up, Jimmy Cowboy, these guys are always on hand, and they always make sure that our guests who visit the Mara, regardless of the time of year, always get the best possible experience. And the great thing with having these guys on board is they've got such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the Masai Mara, regardless of the time of year. I mean, their sixth sense, particularly Jimmy, this man you're seeing over here, he can pick up on animal movements and predict their next move extremely well. I mean, he can see leopards that are behind a rock up on a hillside, and he's already driven like 40, 50 meters past this, and then eventually stops and says, oh, there's a leopard up there. And he's spot on almost every single time. So that wealth of knowledge and experience within this reserve, because it's such a massive area, it's good to have guys who understand the area so well. Because like right here, Jimmy was on a call to one of the junior guides who hasn't guided in the Masai Mara for many years, asking for advice, saying, listen, Jimmy, where are the lions? We need to see lions. And he was just helping the guy out. So to have these guys on board, and we're very fortunate to have them year round because they are wildlife employees in East Africa. They create an incredible experience for our guests. And as I promised, a sunrise like this is almost a guarantee to every single start of your day in the Masai Mara, depending on cloud cover, but it's always usually pretty special. From that point onwards, this is what you're going to. Probably the second biggest drawing card when you think of the Masai Mara, lion. The Masai Mara is home to so many lion. And I can almost guarantee you that you will, I can almost promise you will see a lion in the Masai Mara if you spend 3 to 4 days in the area. And you'll see different sizes, shapes, and ages of lion. These animals aren't migratory. These animals that you see from this point onwards throughout this video clip are animals that will call the Masai Mara home throughout the year. Lions are territorial, so they'll stick around. And the great thing is, because there's such a good dynamic of lion in the Mara, for some reason you always get to find cubs of varied sizes, baby cubs, sub-adults, between sub-adult and babies, whatever you want to call it, there's always baby action. And the cool thing with being in and around the Masai Mara during the off-peak is that you're not racing from crossing point to crossing point to ensure that you see a crossing, because sometimes you sit for 6 to 7 hours, if not more, waiting for these build-ups to cross and move through. But now that we can, out of the peak season when there aren't many wildebeest around, spend more time with animals such as lion. And you can pick up on unique behaviors like this. Like this day, we were sitting with these 2 lionesses and their cubs, and they were busy. Watch this girl on the right now. Look at that face. She is not happy. very special and very funny moments. I'm just going to pause this for a while, that you can pick up on if you are willing and able to spend time with animals like this. I mean, there were no build-ups, there were no crossings. We had these lines, we decided, well, this is special, we're going to sit with it. And these cubs were literally just playing with each other, having a good time. Moms were sleeping. And eventually one of the cubs picked up on what is a little grass hyrax, a little dassie, running through the grass, started stalking it. And to us, it looks super cute and playful, but it's a massive learning curve. And what you would naturally think with predators is go straight in for the kill and enjoy a feast. Whereas these two mothers are experienced cats. They knew exactly that this hyrax, yes, it's got a sore bite. That's why that girl was smiling so greatly over there on the top right. They've got a sore bite, but it's not a life-threatening animal to its cub. So they allowed the cubs to practice their hunting techniques, use those claws. Where do I bite an animal? And this went on for a very long time, where these cubs were just wrestling with this thing and learning. And if you were racing around chasing the crossing action, scenes like that wouldn't be possible. Scenes like this as well. Sitting with lions, finishing off a young zebra carcass, and eventually about 30 hyena just emerged out of the grass and surrounded us, surrounded the lion, was very vocal, and it was incredible. And one of the youngsters got lucky enough to actually snatch a piece of meat and make his way home to a proud family. Leopard, also a very common animal to see in and around the Masai Mara. And particularly, again, during that off-peak period. Reason being is because leopard have to move a lot more to look for food because there are millions of wildebeest around. Cheetah, a close relative to that leopard, probably one of the best reserves in the world to view these elegant cats, to view them doing what they do best, running at high speeds, and if you get lucky enough, actually witness them pull down a prey species. And this is all thanks to the time that you now have from not having to race from one point to another. Another example, a serval. I mean, I don't know how many of you have seen a serval in the wild. In all my years of guiding prior to working with Wild Eye, I'd never seen a serval until I hit the Masai Mara in the month of February. This was now recent, this year, watching the serval hunting frogs and small fish in the marsh of the Masai Mara. So there's always something truly special waiting in and around every corner in the Masai Mara. And as I mentioned, all of these animals aren't migratory. So massive herds of giraffe like this are a common occurrence almost every single day. I mean, during one Mara week, I swear we saw more, or peak week, we saw more giraffe than we saw wildebeest. I kid you not. And Gerry from Walt, I know, will back me on this. We saw so many giraffe and almost no wildebeest. And I mean, this place is just an absolute paradise with massive herds of elephants, particularly peak weeks, peak seasons. You don't see many elephant because the wildebeest kind of flush them out to higher ground outside of the reserve. Off peak weeks, there are so many elephants in the Masai Mara. It's unbelievable. And their movements are also so predictable, which is great. And again, that's where Jimmy and Sammy's kind of experience really falls into place, is that they just judge these animals. They know where they're going to cross the road, and they can go and position us in areas like this, where the animals come walking straight towards us. With an animal walking into your comfortable zone or happy space, this is telling you that this animal is happy with being in your presence. Whereas if we had to race to that point where they were crossing, would have been a different story, because now we're entering their comfort zone. So home to the big five throughout the year, including your buffalo, your lion, your leopard, elephant. I missed one. I don't know which one I missed, but all of the big five are in the Masai Mara. And with the Mara as well come incredible bird species. If you're a bird lover, you will love the Masai Mara. I think, yes, if I recall correctly, I think there's about 450 or over 450 different bird species recorded here in this reserve. One being the rare southern ground hornbill, the one previous to that, secondary bird. But there's always just great interaction and great behavior when it comes to every animal. Like, yeah, swallows having a great bath, a big flock of them just diving into the water. The Mara River, as they say, water is life. This place is thriving with game. That river is always, always, always busy. There's always something happening. May it be crocodile, may it be hippo, may it be birds, may it be animals coming in to drink, elephant, zebra, elephant, giraffe, anything crossing the river. It is forever booming. So literally, this place is a naturalist's and a wildlife photographer's. It's such a hotspot. It thrives with game throughout the year, regardless as to when you visit, really. And I must say, some of my personal favorite moments in the Masai Mara, as you can see, it's just covered with plains game as well. But some of my personal favorite moments when it comes to a safari in the Masai Mara have been outside of the peak season, because the grass is greener, it's taller. It's a totally different place compared to the Mara peak weeks. Not only is it quieter, but it's greener, it's lush, and you just get to spend quality time in sightings. And I mean, if any of you on here have experienced a balloon safari in the Masai Mara, it is absolutely phenomenal. A whole different perspective, a tranquil experience. And the cool thing about doing this in the off-peak season is, in the peak season, during the migration, there can be up to 12 of those colorful balloons. These are just little governor's balloons, these colorful ones. 12 up in the sky, and that's excluding all the other balloons in the area. And doing it in the off-peak season, like 3 will be crowded. There's usually 1 to 2 balloons, so securing your space on an adventure like this is almost a guarantee during the off-peak. And you can just see how green and lush everything is. It is just such an incredible place. And I mean, again, elephants coming out, happy days, and loving life. And yes, the Mara can also have quiet days. There's always something pretty to see. May it be butterflies on a beautiful piece of vegetation. It could be anything. It could be something as simple as the sun setting and wildebeest walking past it. I mean, I think back to like some of my favorite sunrises, excuse me, come from the Amboseli. Some of my favorite sunsets come from the Masai Mara. It's just such a spectacular destination, regardless as to the time of year. If I can give a little bit of a suggestion, probably the only time to avoid is the long rain periods. So around April and May, this is when big rains fall. When this reserve gets really wet after a lot of rainfall, you could expect quite a lot of difficulty moving around this reserve. There could be a lot of roads closed because of this. So probably the months of April and May, avoid those, but everything else, this place is absolutely spectacular. And you can just see in the top right here, Elaine, one of my previous guests that joined me on the Best of Kenya in the month of February, just jumping for joy. She was loving life. Her husband to the left, Deji, taking the photograph of her. And I would like to read a quote before, and this will conclude this chat, of what Deji had mentioned, because Deji is quite a well-traveled individual. He's seen many destinations and the Mara on numerous occasions before joining me in the month of February. And this is what he had said. I thought I knew what to expect from the Masai Mara. This was my 4th trip, my first visit outside of the migration crossing season. However, the bloody place still managed to amaze, astonish, and over-deliver. In February, the Mara's mantle of vegetation is strikingly distinct from its appearance in August. Time and time again, I was stunned by how this incredible place was so familiar yet so different. By the way, you haven't lived until you've seen silhouetted giraffes cantering across enormous grasslands battered by the dawn colors of light. When you have a terrific guide like Michael, you will capture images that will continue to refresh your soul long after the trip is done. Deji, I really appreciate the kind words that you had said about me there, but I mean, what you had said about the Mara has just summed it up. It is an absolutely incredible place. And what Deji had spoken about, those giraffes silhouetted by the dawn light, we had just left Serena, that beautiful lodge up on that hill. And as we came down the road, we had a herd of giraffe to the right where the sun was almost about to peak over the horizon. So we had these beautiful pastel-like reds, orange, yellow, and then even still the purple higher up, way above the horizon. And we just had giraffe necking each other and running from side to side. And that was literally a 30-second drive outside of the gate. So yeah, as Deji had said, the place it always over delivers and always seems to just blow your mind. It is a phenomenal destination. And I do hope that every single one of you either get to visit it for the first time or get to visit it again in the future. Because it is just truly phenomenal. It'll steal a big part of your heart. So please do be warned. But I do see some chats that have popped in. I do see some questions as well. I do appreciate everyone's time, and I hope you enjoyed that. But let me get to answering some questions. I see Kim saying, I miss Sammy dearly. He's truly one of a kind. He is. That man also makes that experience. He's an absolute legend. But Path, your question, since all wildlife trips are in the Mara Triangle, is off-roading allowed in the Mara Triangle? And how do you follow the animals when they are not along the road? Great question. So you are allowed to do off-roading in the Masai Mara, depending on where you are. So areas close to the Mara River, there's usually a main road that runs about 100 to 200 meters away from the river. Anywhere from that road or approaching the river is considered high use zones due to the migratory action. There's usually a lot of hooves, which obviously cause a hell of a lot of damage to the environment. Moving in this area, there's a lot of grazing. So it's a very, it's an area that's, vulnerable is not the word. Anyway, they don't want vehicles on that piece of land because it is extremely, yes, I keep getting stuck on this word. I'm not going to get to the word. I'm sure you think I'm sure you know what I'm thinking of, but it is, they don't want us to drive there because we'll impact the environment too much. But then everything on the opposite end of that road and moving up into the triangle towards the escarpments, you are allowed to do off-roading, but only for cats, nothing else. And so in areas like this, it is also still very regulated and quite strict, because if animals are moving, if the lion is walking through the field, you can't then from the road drive and follow it. You need to wait for it to stop and then make your way in. From that point onwards, if they move, then you can follow along with them. But as I had mentioned, rules are very regulated within the triangle in order to ensure the sustainability of the area itself. So everything that goes with it, the wildlife and the vegetation. So yes, you can do off-roading. It just depends on where you are and what animal you are sitting with. I don't want to talk down on the other side of the river, the dark side of the river, but I had hosted a private safari on that side last year, and some of the behavior I saw of the guides there it's quite sad, seeing their attitude and their behavior towards wildlife and the natural environment, all just chasing the gratuity. I mean, the people scream at the guide saying, if you don't get me closer, you're not getting a gratuity. And then he goes bashing off into the bush along with 40 other vehicles. And then in turn, a black rhino gets so upset and smashes the vehicle. I mean, what is the point? There's no good in that whatsoever for anyone. So yes, I'm a big fan of the triangle and I back every single one of their rules, but you can do off-roading depending on species and depending on the area you are in. Thanks for that, Path. Great question. Jan, sorry, I joined a couple of minutes late. Where do I stay in? Oh, where do you stay in off-season? Sorry. So we make use of a lodge in February. During the Best of Kenya, we make use of Mara Serena. And that's literally right in the middle of the triangle, and one of only 2 permanent camps inside the triangle, which again is a massive highlight again, because there's less vehicle traffic. Whereas on the other side, there are permanent camps in the reserve and permanent camps in conservancies outside. So in peak and off-peak seasons, you'll see a lot less vehicle movement in the triangle than you would in the main reserve. So Jan, we make use of Mara Serena in February, and we make use of our very own Wild Mara camp on the bank of the Mara River, close to the Purangat Bridge, the southern point of the triangle. during the months of June through to into November. Cool question, and thank you for asking. Then Rupert, is Wild Eye traversing area the whole of the Mara Triangle? Yes. So we can traverse the whole of the triangle, and it's a massive area. I mean, yes, we spent one day in a peak week where there weren't many wildebeest around. So we decided, well, there's no crossings, no point staying at the river. Let's make our way up towards the northern point and along the escarpment, and literally we drove around the whole triangle and in between it. And yes, it was such a long day, hot, long and dusty, and still we didn't see all of it. It is a monstrous area. So yes, we can traverse the whole triangle from the marshes in the north, the river that runs through it, up to the escarpments, and then the plains between the river and the escarpment, and then obviously up to the plains of the Tanzanian border. There's a lot of space and a lot of areas to traverse in, but if need be, and the great thing with the location of the Mara Wildlife Camp, be it off-peak, just prior or just post Great Migration season, so that peak season, or during the peak season, people who are staying in the Mara Triangle get access to cross the Purungut Bridge and into the main reserve. This does not include people coming in from the main reserve into the triangle. They're not allowed to do that. So this is great. And because our camp is based right there at the bridge, firstly, it's an extremely tranquil area. We're the only camp down there. There's no one else close to us, which is epic. And what happens then is, if during peak season, for example, we wake up early, we leave, and we see there's millions of wildebeest on our side of the river making their way towards the river, you obviously want to experience a crossing coming your way, photographing their heads and not their bums leaving. We can quickly just zip over the river and whoop, we're in a perfect spot. And we usually the first people at these main crossing points every morning. Reason being is because our camp is right there next to these main areas or these main crossing points, and vice versa in the afternoons. We're usually the last ones because our camp is not that far away from these points. And when people have to race back and make their way to the camp, we can spend another hour sitting there because we've only got a 5-minute drive back to camp, another hour's Ferrari safari back to camp. So yes, Rupert, we could traverse the whole Mara Triangle as well as the Mara Main. Great question, and thank you for asking. And then there's one more question coming in from Path. How often have you experienced lion at Mara Camp at night? Oh, very often. Very, very, very often. We have lions calling around camp every single night. You hear them. I remember when our camp was set up in that particular location in that cul-de-sac, the very first week, Johan van Zyl was hosting, and he had a group in, and his guest went into the room to shower, and had his shower, was great, walked into his room, dried up, got dressed, and as he walked out of his room, there was a lioness standing like right in front of his porch, if I may. Because how our tents work is, as you come out of where your two beds are, you have your dressing area with a clothes rack and your ensuite toilet, and then just outside of that you have a washing basin and 2 chairs, and this lioness was standing there. This man just ran straight back in and started screaming, lion, lion, lion. Dixon and Tenke, all our guys, Masai family came in and chased them off. But they were in camp trying to hunt a baby hippo. So yes, we have lions in camp almost every night, and during the day as well. I mean, yes, I nearly got absolutely destroyed by a stallion zebra the one day. We were having lunch and we had just finished, and there was massive commotion happening in the camp because this cul-de-sac is full of crotons, these short shrubby trees, and yes, we heard this commotion, all these hooves. So as I stepped out of the dining tent, I just heard this, and I looked to my left, and it was, if I was in that zebra's way, I was dead. I wouldn't have been here today. That he missed me by like half a meter. I just felt this gust of wind as he ran past me, and we were wondering, what the hell is going on? We didn't know if they were, because the reason why our camp is based there is to stop animals from crossing there, because this particular crossing point, a lot of animals lose their lives there every year, because once they enter, the first couple that go through make it out easy, but once there's a backlog, the stream pushes them downstream, they're faced with this solid wall of granite and they can't get up. So thousands of animals drown there. So we had just thought that it was Dixon and them chasing them out the camp. But when we left for safari that afternoon, we had 2 lioness on a zebra kill right next to our access road. So yes, we have lions in camp on a very regular basis. It's really cool. Charlotte, what time do you have to be back at camp at night? And what time are you allowed to leave in the morning? So reserves in East Africa, and because it's a national park, and most national parks are like that in South Africa, Southern Africa, and then East Africa, is usually at sunrise and at sunset. So at sunset, you have to be back in. At sunrise, you can head out. But because of the great relationship we've built with the rangers in the area, we often tend to get about 15 to 20 minutes grace. So we can leave a bit earlier sometimes if they're in a good mood and get back, because we have rangers that stay in camp with us every night to make sure things are safe and all that. And then in the evenings, yes, we've got back late and it's been quite dark already, but we get away with it because of the respect we have for the authority in the area and vice versa. Cool question. Jan, how are the Wildeye hosts allocated to Mara trips? Well, it's pretty much at random. So I used to host the first Mara week, the first peak week, because it ran back to back with the Best of Kenya that ran in July. So I would then do that exact week. But basically what we try and do is we try and get each guide up there for 2 weeks at a time, just so that it's less flying up and down from South Africa to Kenya. But then it's also a fair share. So everyone tends to get the same amount of Mara weeks, may it be off-peak and peak week. But it's random to a point, but there is a lot of planning behind it, because during, say, the 5th week, I might be in Mana Pools hosting the Best of Mana Pools, and I can't host that week. So Trevor, who is available, will then host it. So it just comes down to the availability and who is able to host that week at that particular time. Cool question. Thanks, Jan. And then Iago, could someone stay in Mara Wildeye camp without being in a Wildeye tour? Unfortunately not. If you want to join us in our camp, you will have to book a trip with us, Iago. Yes, that's the short answer, and the long one will be a lot longer. So unfortunately, yes, you'll have to be on a Wildeye tour. And our camp is functional from June through to November. It'll be up and running. So Grace, hi Michael. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for joining you at the end of October. As am I. Look, they crossed. I hope it is possible. But what is the temperature there at the time of year? I cannot wait to go back. So mornings so the Mara is, or Kenya in general, because it's tropical, it's very close to the equator. Midday is usually very warm. So you want to have short pants on, short sleeve shirt. It can get nice and hot up there regardless of the time of year. But in October, yes, it can get quite chilly in the early mornings and late evenings. So a nice woolly lined fleece, thicker jacket if you are sensitive to the cooler weather, a beanie, long pants, definitely recommended, because it can get quite chilly throughout the evenings. And yes, it can go low single digits, so around 5-6 degrees Celsius. It can get pretty chilly, but then as you head out in the mornings, it's around 10-11 degrees Celsius. Remember that wind chill factor also makes a big difference. All right, guys, there's 3 more questions, and this will be it then. How about mosquitoes? Are there times when they are particularly bad? No, not really. I've been, and surprisingly, because you're so close to the water, I thought you would kind of get carried away by these mosquitoes, and it's not the point. There's not so many. And we do have repellents available in camp, but you do not have to worry too much about them. I haven't, through my experience, I haven't been bitten much, and I'm usually a big magnet to mosquito. So no, mosquito aren't too much of a problem. Thank you for that question. Path. Is it true that there's a higher chance to witness a hunt during February in comparison to the seasons month, migration season. Look, witnessing a hunt it's just everything really comes down to the luck of the day. I've seen more hunting behavior and actual takedowns and hunting itself during the peak week, so during the migration, because what these lions do, they just kind of flock towards the rivers or the river and they wait there. And as these wildebeest cross, I mean, it's a strenuous thing. It's not an easy little like stroll through a little stream. They swim, they have to avoid crocodiles, they're getting trampled on, they're falling onto rocks. It's a major thing. And when they come out on the other side, they're pretty exhausted and they kind of just immediately revert to grazing a couple of 100 meters up. And what the lions do is they sit and anchor themselves there and wait for, because they know where the active crossing points are, and they will sit and hunker behind a thick bush or a vehicle, whatever it may be. And as these wildebeest come out, they whack them. So I've seen more hunting action during migration season for sure. And then Jan, do you fly into Nairobi or the Mara itself? So yes, depending on where you're coming from. So from South Africa, everyone really from around the globe will have to flock into Nairobi, JKIA, which is kind of seen as East Africa's or Africa's hub. I mean, it's such a busy airport. And then from there, what we usually do with all of our safaris in East Africa, or in Kenya, for example, we would recommend our guests coming in to fly obviously into Nairobi National Airport, JKIA, and then from there a day earlier. And then from the airport, you make your way to your hotel for the night where you can rest and kind of get ready for an epic adventure. And then the next morning, you will get transferred to Wilson Airport, which we usually recommend guests stay in the Western, and literally right across the road from the Western Hotel is the Wilson Airport. And from there, you will get in a Cessna Caravan and then fly a 45-minute flight into the Masai Mara. So yes, no international flights coming in to the Mara. I know there are now direct flights from Uganda directly into the Masai Mara, but again, that's only from one particular destination, and vice versa. If you want to, if you want to go do a guerrilla trekking experience after your week in the Mara, you can fly directly from the Masai Mara into Uganda. Cool question. Thank you, Jan. And thank you once again for everyone who has joined me this evening. I hope that you feel inspired. I hope that you enjoyed the chat as much as I did. I hope you learned something. And yes, thank you all for the great questions. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I appreciate your time. If it is the start of your day, good luck, and I hope it's a good one. If it's midday, enjoy your lunch break. And if it is in the evening, enjoy that glass of wine. And I look forward to chatting to all of you again in future episodes. Mariah, I see your text there. 3 weeks in the Mara next year. It is going to be phenomenal. I cannot wait. Have a great evening, everyone. And thanks again. Chat soon. Bye-bye.